I was convinced that I was going to be an English teacher. That was sort of the path I was heading down. And then once I actually started teaching, I didn't love it. I had a little bit of that moment that I think many people go through where you're like, I've just put my heart and soul into school for this subject and now I don't like it. Like, what do you do? So I moved to Toronto in 2013, I believe it was. I was living in my friend's living room on a futon with like a clothing rack, and that was about it. I bought a domain name, and before I knew it, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing this. I'm actually doing this.
Problems are what? Problems are profits!
What's going on, everyone? It's Rebecca Lynn Matheson, aka the Canadian Cottage Girl, and welcome to the final episode of season 2 of the Problems or Profits podcast. We are on episode 40 today, and we have a very special guest, Courtney, who started the business Lost Cycle, and I cannot wait to dive deep into kind of Courtney's business model and any challenges that she's faced as an entrepreneur in the fitness industry and beyond. So before we get into all of that and Courtney's backstory, I'd like to just introduce what Problems or Profits really means. And for me, Problems or Profits is kind of a philosophy, a mantra of really being able to take on any challenges and overcome the obstacles in business that you are faced with. And I think going into every single problem as an opportunity to learn, grow, and move forward even better and stronger is the way to go. And a lot of people in failing businesses tend to see those problems in a different light, and maybe they don't overcome some of those obstacles. So I really love the philosophy of taking on those problems in a meaningful way. And even if you fail forward. So Courtney, welcome to the Problems or Profits podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is very exciting.
I hear this is your first podcast appearance amongst other kind of media productions, interviews that you've done in the past. This is the first podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've always wanted to be part of a podcast, so this is really cool. I'm happy to be here and share my experience.
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned to you earlier, you came highly recommended from Nicole, who was actually on one of our previous episodes here on the Problems or Profits podcast for her scrunchie that she has built into a business while being in university and a full-time rower. Nicole and I actually both went to Western and competed as athletes in different sports, but I can totally understand that background. And I'm really excited to have you, Courtney, and dive deeper into how things have been in the fitness industry and learn a little bit more about your backstory. So let's just start off with a few warm-up questions that we always ask the guests on the podcast. So first one is, if you had $1 million and only 24 hours to spend it before it disappears, what would you do with it?
Oh my goodness, I love that question. I mean, I would love to be so creative with my answer, but honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is like grabbing all my friends and we're going to Vegas, you know? Like you gotta gamble in my mind. If you only got 24 hours, I think that's what I would do.
That's
first
awesome.
thing that comes to my mind for sure.
That's very experiential. And if you only have 24 hours, you might as well create some memories with the people that you love.
Yeah, I mean, my mantra to my approach to life is very much about living large and living in the moment. So it would just be on brand for me to like disappear to Vegas for 24 hours and see what happens.
That's so awesome. Have you ever been to Vegas, or would that be the first trip?
I've been a couple times and I love it. I know that it's not for everyone because it's a little busy and crazy at all times, and something about that just excites me. I don't know. I love it.
That's awesome. Okay, next warm-up question here for you is, what is the most expensive thing that you've ever broken?
Broken? Oh gosh. Like maybe, I feel like I've gone higher than a cell phone. I would say a computer. I've definitely spilled water across a keyboard. I think most people have had that experience at some point in their lives. But yeah, with a lot of computers, that's a big whoopsie. So yeah, I've gone through a couple laptops. That would be I think that's my biggest break.
I think that's very relatable. Everyone's had those moments where something falls on the electronics. It's always a panic.
Like, oh yeah.
Rice does not always work.
No.
All right, last warm-up question here for you is, why are you you?
Oh, that's a great question. I think a lot of who I am today comes from the experience I've had in my life. I've definitely been through some hard situations, and I think that's really helped me come out on the other side. My dad is like this positive ray of light, and I just really try to emulate what he is like as a person. So I think it's a combination of my experience and my parents, and I don't know. I think you can grow more in those difficult times, as obvious as that might sound. And I think my personality is really a result of that.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I think we all live very unique lives, and we can only have one perspective based off of the experiences that we've had. And each experience helps us grow and mold that perspective even more. But I love that you brought up the foundation of your parents. I think that is where everyone really starts from. That's the first mentor, or the first person that you really look up to. And
Totally.
I think to have such a positive role model in your life, it's really cool to hear that. And I think a lot of people can relate to having parents who you're able to really look up to and build and grow off of.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Courtney, I'd love to hear a little bit more of your backstory. So why don't you just start things off by giving us a little intro here, talking a little bit about who you are, where you're coming from, and a little bit about your business.
Yeah. So my name now is Courtney Stache. I just got married this summer.
Congrats.
Thank you. But my OG last name is Grafton. I was born in Calgary, Alberta, and we moved here to London, Ontario in the 90s. So I grew up in London, went to university at Laurier, Golden Hawks for life. And after Laurier, I went to Teachers College back here at Western, and I was convinced that I was going to be an English teacher. That was sort of the path I was heading down. And then once I actually started teaching, I didn't love it. Had a little bit of that moment that I think many people go through, where you're like, I've just put my heart and soul into school for this subject, and now I don't like it. Like, what do you do? So I decided to travel. I spent a year backpacking through Southeast Asia. I went to Australia, I went to Fiji, and just had the best time, working where I could. And then when I got back, decided that I wanted to move to a bigger city and kind of try my hand at finding something bigger. So I moved to Toronto in 2013, I believe it was. And I worked as a bridal consultant for my first 4 years in Toronto. I was living in my friend's living room on a futon with like a clothing rack, and that was about it. And I got into this business selling wedding dresses, which was just so random, but such a great experience. And at the same time that I was in that industry, I was also a very big runner. So I was running half marathons and all these different races throughout the year. But unfortunately with running, it can lead to injury, which it did for me. So I was told I needed to find a sport that I could do that wasn't so hard on my joints.
Right.
But me being me, I usually go full tilt on anything I do. So I found cycling, and it quickly went from just being an alternative to running to like a full-blown obsession, which led me to get my spin certification, and then connected to an owner who is opening a rhythm riding studio in Toronto called Spoke House. And I was one of their founding instructors, and it was my first time ever being up on a bike in front of people. I had no idea what I was doing. I was nervous to talk on a microphone, but I just kept going and riding and practicing, and I fell absolutely in love with it. So I was in that for about another 4 years, and then got this crazy idea to bring rhythm riding to London, Ontario, because I knew that it didn't really exist here. There was spin studios or gyms that offered spin, but nothing with rhythm riding specifically. So my now husband was like, why don't you just open your own? And it sounds like such a minimal thing to say, but it had so much impact, and I agreed to it. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And it was kind of like, I bought a domain name, and before I knew it, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing this. I'm actually doing this. So yeah, we moved here 2 years ago now, almost 3 years ago. And Lost Cycle was born in August of 2019.
Amazing. Oh, I love that story. It's definitely refreshing to hear somebody just follow down a pathway, and just out of pure like passion, and almost as well out of like necessity too. Like you were injured in running, and then you found another passion and another way to still stay fit and active, and now it's become something even bigger, and you've created a business from it. So that's definitely one way to turn a situation around. Big time. Tell me a little bit about the name. So it really stuck out to me when I first heard this name, Lost Cycle, because it almost like alludes to a rhythm, or like very connected to like soulful type vibe. So I just want to hear the backstory behind the name, because I think it's really clever.
Okay, well, I mean, to get to this name felt like a journey in itself. I don't know if most business owners just like think of the name and they're like, that's it, that's what it will be. Or if everyone kind of goes through this like crisis of trying to figure out what the name is, because it holds so much value, right? So I wanted it to be perfect. So I even sought out like brand specialists, and I described to him what we were and what I was looking for, but I couldn't land on anything, like nothing I could see when I visualized it. And I was so worried that I would just never find this name. So I was talking to this brand specialist, and he's like, tell me what you're going for. And I was like, the idea is that you're in this dark room, and the music is so loud, and you're sweating and you're moving, and you just get lost in the music and the beat and the environment. And he goes, I think you just said the name of your studio. And I was like, what did I say? What did I say? And he was like, you already said it. Like, I want you to think about it, and then like call me back when you figure out what your name is. And so I got off this call, and I was like, what did I say? And then I was like lost in the music, and I was like, Lost Cycle, Lost Cycle. That is what we're going to call it. And it just kind of stuck, and I fell in love with the name. And I love the idea that getting lost is often this thing that's supposed to be a bad thing, that like you got to find your way back. And we're kind of flipping that switch, saying like, no, it's good to be lost, because you're allowing yourself to just be in this moment, just exist on this bike with all these people. So it's a name I love. I'm so proud of it. And it just, I can't even see the word lost without thinking of our space now. So I love it.
Yeah, that is really cool to hear. And it actually makes me think anyways, a little bit of your backstory, and you going on that adventure to go traveling for that period of time in your life. And a lot of people will take this like avenue or pathway to find themselves because they're feeling lost. But I actually like what you said there about the fact that there's like a bliss and a release in that, in letting go, just being present in the moment and getting lost in what you're doing. And I absolutely love that kind of concept and philosophy. So how have you incorporated that into the way that you've actually designed the business? Because it's one thing to come up with the concept, it's another thing to execute as a business owner on the concept. There are so many good ideas out there, but execution is the hardest part. So how have you incorporated that mantra and that philosophy into the actual business itself?
Well, so I really wanted to make like in our space that when you come into the lobby and then you're going into the space where you're going to be riding, that they're very different. So you go into this kind of bright lobby with like brick and blue and like it kind of reminds me of like almost like a clubhouse. But then when you go into the space where you're riding, it's like a totally different experience. So dark with only like minimal lighting. And my biggest thing was we had to have this bump and sound system to make sure that you could really get lost in the music. I wanted my music to be so loud so that you can't even hear your own thoughts when you're on that bike. And that was going to be a huge piece of it. So creating the physical space was a huge element. And then the people I hire. So my instructors are not just up there taking you from A to B, starting a class and finishing it. They create almost a story in the way they start you out and carry you through this class. They truly are coaches that are taking you on this whole journey for 50 minutes. From the second you start that first beat to nearly the end of class, you kind of gone through this like wave of emotions, and that's sort of the lost experience. You have no phone in there. It's just you and the music and all these people. So I think the way we execute the classes too just really contributes to that mentality of like, just be here, just get lost in this moment.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk a little bit about the starting point of the business and then where you're at now, because you started in 2019, which as many people know, there were many challenges in 2020 and 2021 for business owners, and definitely for the fitness industry. So let's talk about that and kind of some of the things that you faced as a business owner.
Yeah. So, I mean, opening in 2019, I knew that because I was doing this completely on my own, I knew that I really had to be conscious of like budgeting and of course set a budget for everything. But as most people will probably admit, that you get going with things and costs aren't always where you want them to be. There's usually surprises, but I knew that to save a lot, I would have to build the space myself. I have zero experience with contracting or anything like that. But my husband is a contractor, so he taught me how to do a lot of it. So I was drilling up drywall and mudding and painting and laying floor so that I could save the money to have the space. And then when we opened, we started small. We had just 15 bikes. I've chose a more inexpensive model of bike so that our upfront costs wouldn't be too crazy. And the business advice I had been given was just keep your costs low so that you can, survive. And that's kind of what I did. And we started to grow pretty quickly, but we had only been open for 6 months when COVID hit. So I had no idea what to do. We were still going to be paying our rent. None of my employees would be working, so we were able to save some costs there. Sorry, my dogs are just in the background here. I'm going to just move locations.
No worries.
But yeah, we were able to pivot in the sense that we were going to offer virtual, but we didn't want it to be a permanent thing. Sorry, I'm just moving rooms here. So with COVID hitting, it was, like I'm sure for many business owners, such a earth-shattering experience. Sorry, I have to sit on my floor. I hope that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was a massive pivot for us. And being so newly opened, there was still a lot of debt and things that we had to take care of. So knowing that we weren't going to have any income was terrifying. That's the only way I can describe it, really. It was absolutely terrifying.
Absolutely. And so you get into this spot, you've just been open for 6 months. You've now got the bikes, you've got the equipment, you've done the work in order to get this thing up and running. And then COVID just squashes all of that. So you have absolutely zero income and you're unable to really progress forward in any way. So how were you able to turn that around and survive during that time? I've heard
Yeah.
of a lot of gyms in London and other cities that have had to shut down. So what allowed you to get through that?
Yeah, well, we had a couple things working for us because we had done so well right up until COVID hit. It was basically just this pot of what we had made that was slowly draining down through COVID. So we had made all this money initially with our success, but then that was just getting drained with rent and hydro and everything that we were still paying throughout COVID. And it did get to a point where I realized, okay, the well is going to run dry, and what do we do next? So luckily we were able to apply for the SEBA loan, which was the 40,000, and if you are able to pay it back at this year, actually, then they waived 10,000 of that. So we were able to get that, but it was a long process to even get that loan because you have to apply, and everyone was applying, so it was taking a lot of time. So everything was very time sensitive, yet we still had to just kind of watch our bank account drain. Luckily, we were able to bring in a small amount of income doing virtual rides and audio rides, as well as we ran a GoFundMe, and we had donations up to $2,000 at least for a GoFundMe, which wasn't going to necessarily save us, but definitely helped us cover some of those costs. And then by the time we were able to open, I think we had like the last remaining dollars in our bank account. And I remember just thinking, all right, this is like, we gotta start being successful again, or we're just not gonna make it. But it was very close, and it was extremely hard to watch other businesses have to close their doors, knowing that that likely was going to be our reality if we weren't able to open soon.
Absolutely. Now, some of the challenges as a business owner, you have staff, and now suddenly the staff you're unable to employ during that time. So what was that process like? Were you able to maintain a lot of the same people? Did you have a lot of turnover? Was it a lot of training and hiring, or what was that process like for you when you started back up again?
Well, luckily, we still have a lot of our original team. We did unfortunately have some people that were in their final years of school. So once they graduated, it was kind of, we knew that we would possibly lose those people, but it happened a lot sooner due to COVID. So we did have a couple employees who had to move on to bigger things for their own careers, which is always sad. I'd love to believe that everyone's just going to stay at Lost Cycle forever, and I know that's not the case. But we hired more instructors, and when it was safe to do so, we were able to train people in our space while we were closed so that we would be able to hit the ground running when we came back. Most of my staff are in school or have second jobs, so it really was unfortunate to not be able to be operating and paying staff. But luckily, like most of our staff was just like waiting for that call to go back. And that's kind of the culture within our team, is that we are such a tight-knit family. And throughout this, none of them gave up. They were like, all right, we'll just wait till we can open again. And they really kept me afloat because I had doubt, I was worried, and they were the ones really that were like, no, it's going to be okay. Like we'll get there. We'll get back there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that comes from the leader as well, instilling those core values onto your team, and just having that reciprocated back during tough times is so rewarding. So that's great to hear that you're able to get through that with everyone and kind of come out on the other side. So now that you've been through all of that, you've been able to reopen the doors. Where are things at now in the business, and how are you guys operating?
Yeah, so once we were able to go back to full capacity, we were ready for it because we knew it would be a huge test to our brand as a whole. That when we were able to open with 15 bikes in operation, there was a huge part of it to me that thought, okay, but if we can't fill these classes, then like maybe we aren't doing something right. But it was kind of the opposite. We were hit the ground running. Every time we've had to close and reopen, we get busier and busier and busier, which is amazing. So we were able to go from 15 to 25 bikes, which we needed, which was such a good feeling that we needed those extra bikes because we were so busy. Classes were waitlisted every single night. And we slowly started to see our community coming back, which was really nice. We did have some people who took a little bit longer to come back, just with the integration of the vaccine passports, things like that. But we were really honest with our community when we were opening. We took it so seriously. You know, we spent a fortune on PPE and making sure that we could properly clean everything and fulfill that promise of keeping our riders safe. We wanted to make sure that we were holding true to what we were saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's so great to hear. And now that you've kind of stabilized out, you've not only stabilized, but you've actually expanded the business coming back in, which is awesome.
Yeah.
What are your goals with this brand, with this business? Where do you want to take it now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always dreaming big. So I think the next step would be to have a second location. We would love to have a Lost Cycle in the north end of town, because right now we're more like southwest. And we have clients who drive in from the north or from Lucan and Kilworth and all these places just to come to our classes. So it would be my dream to get a second location, and then we can kind of cater to even more of our community and hire more instructors, possibly add more bikes, like keep filling these rooms.
Absolutely. And is this going to be another DIY project for you and getting the studio up and running?
Oh God, no. I mean, the first time was enough, you know, and it made me have so much respect for people who are in trades, because like carrying drywall, we're also up a flight of stairs. So everything that we had to bring in, we had to carry up these stairs. So like, it's just me most of those days, like climbing on ladders, mudding. I would come home like crying, sore. So yeah, I'm not going to do that again if I don't have to. I think I'll do more of the minimal, like painting, things like that. But the big pieces, I'm happy to pass that buck this time.
Absolutely. I think there's something so special about the first time that you experience that, though, is that like you grind away because you have to, but in that it actually ends up creating a really cool memory in the process and in building it. And every time you go into that space now, it's like, yeah, I built this thing. I literally built it.
It's true. Blood, sweat, and tears, like legit in that room. I probably cried once a week, having a bit of a breakdown. My body was so sore, but yet I was still riding and training to get ready to open. So it was a lot. It was an experience though. That's for sure.
That's right. Absolutely. And so you've taken on this whole spin industry in a big way. But you've had such a diverse background in all of the jobs that you've dabbled in bridal planning. And is there anything outside of spin that if you had more time or you actually could part with some of your time in the business, what other opportunities do you see, or what are some other things that you would love to take down?
I'm very passionate about being involved in the community and different communities. I'm a huge supporter of the LGBTQ community, so I would love to be able to volunteer or work more in that field, just because it's so near and dear to my heart. Many friends in that community, so I feel like I could have a voice to support in some way there. I also just love being able to expand what we're doing. So maybe it's focusing on like community centers or places that don't have access to the type of fitness that we're doing. I'd love to see a world where more people have access to this kind of experience. whether that would be scaling it down in terms of making it financially accessible to more people. I think that's something that I really want to see, is that boutique fitness is so great, and I wish more people could participate in it, but I absolutely understand that there's a huge financial element to that.
Absolutely, there is. Yeah, it's definitely cool to hear, some other potential future opportunities for you. You're only one person, and and you've built quite a lot already. So I always love hearing what other opportunities people, if they had unlimited amounts of time, would take down.
Yeah.
And I think it's a cool exercise to say, wouldn't it be cool if, and then
Yeah.
make an action plan on how you can actually pursue that thing. And definitely following the passions, it's brought you up to this point. And I think every entrepreneur that starts a business from the ground up, there's just some sort of like spirit inside of you that will be entrepreneurial in every element that you decide to take on. So
yeah, it's true. That's true. I see it in Nicole too. Like the moment I met Nicole, I was like, she's got it. She's going far with this. I can tell it. It's just like this little fire burning inside of you, you know?
Oh, absolutely it is. And it's that kind of like unstoppable like voice that's just like, no, I got this. Like, I'm just going to do it myself. Like it will be fine. And then you just jump in with 2 feet and you figure it out. Have you heard of Marie Forleo?
I don't think so.
Okay, she has the best like mantra and phrase, and she's actually written a whole book called Everything is Figure-outable. And ever since I heard that, it was actually on Tom and Lisa Bilio's Impact Theory. They interviewed Marie Forleo, and it's that essentially she talked about her book and about how she came to have that mantra in her life, and it was actually from her mom, which it's really cool that you have so many of those family ties and motivations. But I really think a lot of what you've been saying aligns really well with her mantra of everything is figure-outable, because when you didn't know how to do contracting, you just had somebody teach you. When you didn't know how to start a business, you said, yeah, you know what, like, let's do it. It sounds like a fun challenge. And I think that sort of spirit can really push you forward into just absolutely building and growing and scaling. And I think when you lead with that in a business, the people around you pick up on that. So I can totally appreciate where you're coming from there. And for you, is there any other like problem or challenge that you faced when you were coming up that a young entrepreneur might like kind of not think about when they're themselves jumping in with 2 feet?
I mean, it's hard when you're starting something. I think everyone dreams that like you'll be like successful day one and like there'll be no struggle. So it's hard in our very early days when people didn't even know who we were. You're teaching these classes with such high intensity, and sometimes it was to like 2 people, but we would still go in it at like full throttle. And I just kept, telling my team and myself that like, if we keep giving it our all, like people will find out, kind of the idea of like, if you build it, they will come. And you have to have a lot of trust in what you're doing. And honestly, there's not really a lot of room for doubt in yourself. Of course, there's days when I might not be as confident in what I'm doing, but you really do have to be. I have this saying where I'm always like, you have to be your own biggest fan. And I truly live by that, because if I don't buy what I'm putting down, then like no one else is, So a lot of it is just really, you got to pedal to the metal, keep it going, and trust that it's going to work out for you. But it is scary. And I think I love that saying, everything is figure-outable. It's so true that when people would ask me like, how do you know what you're doing? Sometimes I'm like, I don't. I'm just taking a risk. I'm just going in and trusting that I'm making the right call.
Absolutely. Yeah, like that is so true. Like, how do you know what you're doing? I don't. I'm just making it up as I go.
No. I think people would be lying if they said that they always, knew exactly what they were doing and then what the outcome would be. But, your clients determine that for you. So you can build a whole product or company or service and expect a certain type of person to walk in that door, and that might not be the people that come in your door. So I think a lot of it is just being adaptable and being able to change things on the fly, and really listening to what your community wants. You need to be aligned with what they're looking for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And from the perspective of community building, I actually think that that's a really important element of fitness and what you do. So how do you really build and grow a community, or how do you instill the values or find the people that are aligned with what you're trying to accomplish? You mentioned at the beginning having 2 people in a class, but how do you actually market it up and like continue to grow while maintaining that community?
Yeah, I mean, luckily for us, our biggest growth we see is our riders bringing more riders who bring more riders who bring more riders. So I often say that my riders are all our Lost Cycle influencers. Like, they're all just influencers now, because so many times we would have, two people come in that came together, and then the next time they're bringing 4 more people, and then they're bringing 5 more people, and it just kind of expands.
Right.
So word of mouth has been our biggest way that we've grown so big, and a lot of consistency. My staff, if you were listening to a class, you would think that the room was full every single time, and right now it is usually. But at the beginning, it wasn't always that way, right? So we've always kind of put it all out there. No matter how many people are in that class, we're diving right in. So that helps us a lot.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because even if you have one person show up, you still want that one person to get the most out of the experience. And I've definitely seen in fitness classes before where you're that one person, and then suddenly it's kind of like, well, the energy's not the same.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely a different experience. I mean, and we haven't had really less than double digits in participants for a long time now, which we're very lucky to have that. And but we also don't forget where we came from too, and a lot of it is just, you really have to put in the work. Get your community to see what you're about, and be honest and listen to what they want too.
yeah, I love that so much. And for you, like, what are next steps then? So you want to open up another location. How do you actually go about putting that into practice? So what are the actual next steps in order to see that goal to fruition?
Yeah, well, we have our eye on a couple spaces. We're actually waiting on some zoning things to change, but we're getting there. Financially, we need to still get past some of our COVID damage, I'll call it. But we're on the right track, and we're getting there. We're able to start repaying things. We're not in a position to be like putting down huge deposits, but we're getting there. We're on the right track. And then it would be that we're going to have to, if we can get a second location, then we're going to have to hire more people and host auditions and do this all again. And I'm hoping that our first baby of Lost Cycle will help us be able to have the second soon.
Absolutely. Now, is there a way that you go about your analysis or planning? Do you work with a mentor, or how do you really, from a business perspective, make sure that you're still growing as well? Because you're obviously helping your instructors grow, you're building them up, but how, as a business owner, are you really focusing on growth or development?
Yeah. Well, I joke that my accountant is like my best friend. So my accountant and I are tight. So we talk a lot. And financially, that's my go-to to just kind of be able to check in. Where are we at? Is this realistic? Where do we need to cut costs? How are we doing? That I rely on heavily. But in terms of actually like deciding what's best for the business, I mainly come up with what I want for it, and then I'll often consult maybe another business owner, or I have a family friend who works with businesses doing exactly that, helping them find a direction. But I'm not the best with that, because I often go to him and tell him what I'm thinking. And even if he tells me otherwise, I still probably will do what I want to do. So
you've already made the decision in your head.
yeah, like I'm looking for the validation. And if I don't get it, then I'm probably still going to do it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Courtney, this has been such a great chat. Where is the best place that people can find you, connect, reach out, check into when your classes are?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram. It's just Lost Cycle, all one word. My handle is Courtney is Lost, so it's kind of fitting, both of them. But yeah, find us on Instagram. We post most of our like daily updates, and you get a glimpse as to what the classes look like. We have some of our community members on our page, so you get a really good taste for what we're all about by going through our Instagram. We also have a website, www.lostcycle.ca, and through our website you'd be able to look at all the instructor profiles and book classes, see our prices, and how to even get to Lost Cycle. So one of the things that I'm very hyper aware of is that I know that coming to a new gym or a new space for the first time is like pretty scary for a lot of people. We kind of get, nervous to be in a new space, or fear that we're not going to know what we're doing or where to go or where to park. So we kind of take the legwork out of that. And when you sign up, you get an email that tells you, where you're going, when to arrive, what you're going to need for class. And on our Instagram as well, we have a video directed at new riders that walks you through parking to check-in to getting on your bike. And we just like to make the experience as smooth as possible, because we know that stepping into this like new world of rhythm riding might be a little intimidating for people.
I love that. Well, Courtney, do you have any final wrap-up thoughts here for maybe a young, inspiring entrepreneur listening to this podcast today?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing, if I had to just give anyone like one little piece of advice, would be to trust yourself. And if someone's got an idea and you think you can run with it, then go for it. Like, I think that for younger people, we get, I'm still including myself in younger people as long as I can. But I think we get very torn when life takes a path that you didn't set out, and we feel guilty for it. But I would love to see more entrepreneurs taking that opportunity to just run with it. If you have to change your life plans, that's okay. This might be the best change possible,
Absolutely. Well, it's been such a great chat with you, Courtney, and I really appreciate you coming on to the final episode of season 2 of the Problems or Profits podcast. And thank you to everyone listening here today. Make sure that you check out Courtney's business, Lost Cycle. If you're in the London area, why don't you hop into a class? I know some of you may have some New Year's resolutions for 2022, and certainly trying out a new spin class can be a great way to really jump on the bandwagon and get lost in that cycle. So Courtney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thanks again for tuning in here with Courtney from the Lost Cycle. And guys, it's been a fantastic season 2. So thank you all for listening and being a part of the journey. Peace.
Problems are what? Problems are profits!